All right. We are live, we are recording, and this is part one of our listing process. So sorry about the time change. A couple of you may not have been able to do that, but um this is going to be recorded and archived and put into our training YouTube channel. So the idea is to basically take you from the very beginning of a listing, what you should do first, what you should concentrate on, how you should enter things into MLS, things you should do with appointments for people, just basically everything that can get you from meeting with people and setting up appointments to success and getting paid, which is the ultimate goal. Johnny, you're the only one on here. Is there anything you want me to make sure that I cover today?
I'm just along for the ride, boss. I can soak up everything.
All righty. So, I'm going to share my screen here in a second, but again, I think what we're trying to really walk away with, hopefully, excuse me, is just a really clear understanding of how we can be ultra successful with our clients, with our appointments, handling our database as it relates to listings itself. So let's start with what I think is kind of the most important part of the process. And I'm going to share my screen here. And you guys should be able to see now. All right, so let's just kind of start out as an example, and we'll stick with this one for a little bit. Somebody calls you and says, "Hey, I've got a home to sell." They may have to buy, they may not have to. That doesn't really matter for this example or for this purpose. But I've got to get the value. I've got to figure some things out, right? Now, depending on when I'm talking to them, if like if I'm listening to a message and I call them from my car, I try to pull over, I take notes. The most important thing for me when it comes to sellers is I want to do, and I have a whole bunch of these with me. I have the selling listing questionnaire. I would highly recommend, make 5, 6 copies of these, keep them in a folder in my laptop bag is literally everywhere I go. So I have that all the time with me, and I'll pull over and I'll just, say, if give me a second, I just want to pull over so I can take a couple notes, and everybody appreciates safety. And it just also starts, with responsibility, right? They're like, oh yeah, we caught this guy driving, no big deal. I mean, a lot of people drive and talk, but asking questions, taking notes, it just shows that you're serious. So you grab their names, their address, ma'am, can I just get the address from you real quick? And then is this your phone number? Is this the best one? Or what about an email address? And then I always ask, is there another decision maker that will be a part of this? And they may say, well, yeah, my wife. What's your wife's name? Her name is, Jenna. Great. Do you happen to have her email address? I don't, but I can get it. No big deal. Um, First of all, I just have a couple of questions for you if you have a few minutes. And then remember, I always ask permission to do anything. What is your target listing date? Well, kind of ASAP. We've got an opportunity, in Arizona. We're gonna move down there, whatever. Um, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong form. Give me one second here. This is the wrong form. All right, let me get back to this one. So this is the one you want to carry. It's called the pre-listing questionnaire, and in our library, it's completed by agents, so there's a difference. The other form we'll get to in a little while. We're going to send that to the sellers. Why are you moving? Number one. Well, I got a job transfer. Great. Well, it's a divorce. Okay, so will you guys have to find housing on, both ends? Yep, we will. Okay, well, great. Now you got potentially 3 sales. When your home sales, where will you be going? Well, we're staying local. We'd like to stay in the Elmbrook School District. Have you sold a home before? Now, this is a really important question. You want to make sure you ask that question and allow for some time. And you can ask this when both people are together too, like when you go to the home, because ultimately, when you want to make an appointment, you want all stakeholders present. If there's, a married couple, you want them both there. That's really, really important. But this is the goal. This is where they're going to start to tell you about what Well, the reason why they're not using the agent that helped them buy the house in particular. How much were you planning to ask for your home? Now, if I'm in front of my computer and I've got this form, and what I'll do is I'll just create an opportunity right in Bold Trail so I can do it online. But I want to know, and I set it all up before, right? But I want to know what was that experience like? I want to know what were your pain points? I want to know, and everybody has an idea of how much they think it's worth. Why? Because what do? They go just to Zillow, and I'm just going to do this because it's my old home. Let's say you're talking to somebody now, you just got the address, and you're going to go to what on earth is going on here? So you're going to go and type in while you're talking to them. This is a home. This is my very first single family home. I don't think this is worth 406, but it's probably in the 370s, 380 range, which is insane. Um, but you're going to do that. You're going to do a little research, and then you're going to go to NAR RPR, right? Let's get signed into that quick. Why? Because we want to know where their mindset is at. If they say, well, we'd be happy getting 350, well, what does that mean? That means, and this is a little bit of a different number here, that's actually gone down a little bit. But if I got 350, anything above and beyond that we get for them is going to be a bonus. But if they start throwing out numbers like 425, then I'm going to know that potentially they could be way off. Remember, this Z estimate is probably where everybody kind of first starts, right? They're always going to kind of start on Zillow. So, by the way, as I am doing these things, as I'm researching it, I just print them. So I will print this as is. I'll just hit print or create, whatever, whichever one you need to do. And I put things into a folder. In my Google Drive, it's very simple. Under my John's Files, which is my main folder for my stuff, I have um, I have a folder that's just my sales. And in my sales, there's three things. There's buyers, there's sellers, and there's CMAs. That's all it is. Now, I've been keeping this folder as is for a really long time. So, I've got an archive folder in there too. I don't like clutter. I don't like clutter in my home or my workspace or my computers. So but I'll print this right away. Why? Because I'm going to need it later. And then with Zillow, you can't really print from Zillow. I mean, there's no print option, but you just right click and you just hit print and it'll print it to PDF. Why? Because that's something we're going to talk about down the road. And I might as well just do it now because I'm already there. Okay. Now the FNF marketing, which is available through Alltech, that will give us another piece of the puzzle as well. Of course, I have to do my two-factor here. Why not, right? Everything's two-factor. It feels like this is most of my day is dealing with two-factor authentications all the time. Same thing with property search. Now I'm going to show you how to do this within this app because it is a little bit different. If I just hit this home, it's going to find it. And I have some options here. It's profile with comps, which is ultimately what I'm going to do. But for me, within this app, for me to get an idea of value, I'm going to hit net sheet. And you see there's a value here, 368, 293. Now remember, all I'm doing right now is just getting a feel for what the market might produce. I want to be able to talk like I'm not an idiot either. And so, these are some things because they might ask you, well, what are comps selling for in our area? And by the way, that's probably a little bit of a test, right? It's probably a little bit of a test. And you can say, well, I know that area really well. In fact, I lived about, 3 blocks from there for a while. I grew up in Waukesha or whatever you want to say. And then you can do a quick search in MLS if you have time. Again, time is of the essence a little bit here sometimes. But you can do a quick search, and I'm going to show you something that you may not know in MLS. We'll see. But if you go over here and you hit locate address, which is that thumbnail or not that thumbnail, thumbtack. I just hit, you don't have to put everything in here, but if I just hit 53188 and I hit locate, it's going to take you right there. And you can do a radius search. I can even do like a half a mile. I can create the radius. And again, very quickly, what I'm doing is I'm just looking at solds within a half a mile that are comparable. So if I just did 3 bedroom, let's say 1.5 baths, which is all that home has, 2 car garage, and I'm looking at this view results here, and that'll populate here in a second. But I can get an idea, if I look at this thing while I'm talking to them, I can at least talk like I know what I'm doing. Ultimately, before you call these people, if it's a scenario where you're in front of your computer, then you can have this all prepared as long as you know the address. Now, there's a couple ways you could do this too. I don't know why this isn't loading. Good old MLS. But one of the things you can do is you can also reverse prospect their number, like on a forewarn app, and you can get their address and you can do all this stuff long before you call them. It only takes about 5-10 minutes. I use like I said, I use the RPR, I use the Zillow, and then I go into F&F marketing, which is through Alltech. I don't know what the issue here is with the data, but let me just refresh it, start over, because I think this is kind of cool. Again, you go to quick search. Let's try it again. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. We're going to go to sold, which unfortunately is a lot of numbers. Okay. I'm going to pinpoint it to the address, the city, and the zip. That's really all I need. Locate, radius search, 0.5 miles, create radius. Now it's going to again give me the results. And again, if this doesn't populate and it's slow, I'm just going to abandon the process. All I'm trying to do is narrow it down to homes that are nearby as I'm talking to them. And I can say, well, it's funny. I was actually just looking at the comps on this one. And within a half a mile roughly of your home, there have been 24 sales in the last year. So something's going on with MLS here. I'm going to abandon that and not spend much more time on that. So that just gives me an idea of what's going on. Okay, so now I go back to my form. I just want to make sure that I get a number out of them. Now they may say, well, that's where you come in. We don't really know. And I press it. I don't stop here. I'll say, well, you have to have some type of an idea what's going on. And then a lot of times I've had to say, look, guys, I'm not here to meet your number. And that's when I go into my education. One of the things about taking my graduate and undergrad courses, I take 7 stats classes, which is true. And I dive into numbers big time. But it's also based on data, solds, and gut. And that gut tells me a lot too, because I've sold over 700 homes. Blah, 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 blah. Right? Just little talking points. Is there a number that you're trying to hit? And sometimes they won't answer, and that's fine. I just know they're going to be obstinate. But more than likely, I also understand that the risk to me is the agent who comes in with the higher price they're going to go with. And so I have to make sure that I understand and I make a note of the fact that that might be the case. What do you expect in an agent you hire? This is where they get to tell you what they expect, what they want from you. And then what can an agent expect from them? Because this is a two-way street. It's not just me. And I think that is the biggest difference in the amount of sales that I've had over the years. A lot of people sit back and say, well, I got to kiss their ass. I got to do this. I'm not kissing anybody's ass. I just don't. I don't know how to do it. I won't do it. I don't care to do it. I'm not going to learn. What I will do is I will, through disc profiling, very quickly figure out who you are, what your profile might be based on how our conversation goes. That'll get confirmed when I talk to you in person. And then I got to find out who the dominant personality is, who ultimately is probably the decision maker. Now, I've said this before in these type of workshops, that generally speaking, I have found in a residential sale, which is typically a man and a woman, husband and wife, and obviously we have all different relationships in our lives, but I have found in that scenario, the woman generally makes the decision. That's just my own experience. Now that doesn't mean I'm going to like only talk to her. You got to understand personalities and things. That's another time. Will all decision makers be present for our appointment? Because remember, you haven't made your appointment yet. If what I say sense makes sense, are you comfortable getting going right away? That's gonna give you an idea about and really gauge who they are and their urgency. So I asked them this, and this is really important. And you don't have to do this all, and you have to do it at some point. You can do it in person. What are the top three selling points of your home? And it makes, that they can answer. What are the three things in a home about your home that a buyer may not care for? And that really gets you to understand whether or not they're being objective. Okay. And then above all else, how do you prefer to communicate? Last thing is we make the appointment, we set it. Remember, when we make appointments, we don't merely say to people or ask people, when are you free? Because they're going to pick the most convenient time to them. I don't like weekend appointments. If I have to do it, I will, but I'm a professional just like they are. And I'm going to make it when it's also convenient for me. So I give them two options always. I'm available tomorrow between 3 and 6 o'clock. I do have to be somewhere at 6:30, or I'm available Friday morning. Which works better for you? Okay. Jared James teaches where you can say, it just so happens I'm going to be in that area tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Would that work for you? Now, if they're going to hire the best agent, okay, negotiating even starts with the appointment. Negotiation, don't, and by the way, you're setting the tone because if you just allow people to walk all over you, it's not going to end when they hire you. It's kind of like you have to set down communication guidelines and rules, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But when you are looking into, somebody and whether or not you want to work with them, there's a lot that goes into it. I don't work with everybody. I just don't. And the reason why I don't is because I don't want to. I mean, when I look at what people, like kind of like who people are, what makes them tick, whatever, I'm not going to be a match with everybody. I mean, I know I'm not. But I'm saying, probably 97% of the time when I meet people, it's usually a personal referral. And so I don't have to worry about, selling myself overly. Um, I just go in there and I tell them this is who I am and this is what I do. And um, but we have to make it about them. So there's a different way to do that. But the next thing I want to show you, because I want to make sure that we get this and you know where it is, and I made this available through everybody, is my team's checklist. So this is found in Agent Resources. That's in our Google Drive under CMAs. And this is going to walk you through every single thing you need to do. Now we're just starting at the top here. Okay. Um, a couple quick notes, and I'm not going to read all of this. You can go and get that document. It's just part of, what you got to do to download yourself, customize it, whatever you want to do. Confirm the appointment, but confirm it 24 hours in advance as well. If it's a referral source, make sure you thank them. A handwritten note usually works best. You are going to assign them the seller listing questionnaire. That was the one I was showing you before. It is available in Bold Trail in our library. We'll go back to the library. And in the selling folder, you see the pre-list questionnaire completed by us, and then the selling listing questionnaire. And this is going to ask them a bunch of questions just to get you started. Send it to them. It gets them used to signing things electronically. They fill it out. They answer these questions, including improvements. And then what do they need? Do you need help with any of these things? Is there anything confidential like a divorce? Ideally, if a couple is filing for a divorce, we want them to wait until at least we're under contract to file. Now, I'm not saying that works out with the bigger needs of life. What I'm saying though is that when you are, when you are looking at a timeline, my job is to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get them the most money and the best offer in the least amount of time with the least amount of pain, right? Best offer, which isn't always money. Least amount of time, least amount of pain. That's our job. So, we're going to do some things as a part of that, but we're also going to talk about timing with them. What other ancillary services do you need? They fill it out. Again, it's a great way for us to understand their needs, but also at the same time understand what they need from us. Back to the checklist. You're going to enter them within your CRM. Now, I have specific campaigns that I can utilize. Well, you might say, well, what do you mean? So in here, let's just say, I'm working with Tammy. I enter Tammy into, and I actually sold her house as part of a divorce years ago. I don't know where Tammy went, but let's just use this guy. Under your active campaigns, I have my own setup, right? So I've got through my team, if you're a new buyer and you're going to buy within the next 6 months, this is your campaign. If we're going to work together, here's your campaign. But this is kind of a pre-campaign. It's I am John Gescheidmeyer. And it's just an introduction about who I am, how I started the company, why I have a team, that type of thing. And I think it just it people want to work with people they know, like, and trust. And this is the start, right? They just get to know me. So, regardless of I mean, I don't send that to everybody. It's just a very specific campaign that I use at the appropriate time. All right, so you're going to start doing some research before you head over there, right? You're going to look into the county's GIS site. If you're looking at condos, let's say downtown Milwaukee, or like in the village in Tosa, or down or close to downtown Waukesha, go to walkscore.com. It'll give you an idea of the vehicle dependency portion. What's within walking distance of these people, depending on age, depending on who they are. That's a big deal. This link is a little bit older, but it'll take you to the public policy tax form where you get to identify communities and compare them with taxes. There is a form, and I'm not going to go through all this, called the Today's State of the Market report. I really, really like that report. It's something that I put together years ago. It forces you to go into the comps and identify where the market is heading, whether it's a buyer's market, whether it's a seller's market. There's a lot of things and a lot of tools that you can have. Not only do you have that, but inside of NAR, if you go into research, you can go to residential market trends and get trends by community or by neighborhood. You can do it by schools. You can map an area. Like if you do market trends, let's say, 53188 in Waukesha, that's going to be very different. So where are we at today? This is a seller's market. This is a great graphic to show them. And you don't necessarily have to print it. You can just flip your computer around and do it too. But notice the difference now. If I did like 53186 in Waukesha, the numbers change a little bit. Not much. If I did 53189, that's a very different part of Waukesha. Now you see significant differences in pricing, days on the market, things like that. Right? The months of inventory, to be able to explain that, by the way, is every qualified buyer and every qualified seller would have sold within 6 months when a willing, ready, and able buyer has purchased the property. So, you can look at things like I look at, let's say, even my zip code, which is a big zip code. And, now, I mean, we're talking totally different numbers here. Okay. I can look at, even within, let's say, I'm just going to say Sussex this time. Sussex, a little bit of a smaller community. You can kind of see how that goes. Right. This couple months ago, we were like right here. Now we're over here in just about every community. But another graphic that you can use. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to do all these things. Some of those I already showed you with the NAR and the Zillow. And then I think you got to bring stuff to the table. You've got to bring a folder. We have some great folders here. They're free to you. They were paid for by advertisers. Make sure you put their stuff in there, insurance and whatnot. You should have a bio sheet. You should have something to give people. And then we've got all of our guides. You guys know where that stuff is. Before you get there, and it's really uber important to be on time, drive around the neighborhood. There's nothing better than a block or two down the road when there's a yellow home or a bright pink home or something, right? The bottom line for me is I just want to be able to have talking points. And if I know the neighborhood and I see there's a junkyard down the road, I can say, hey, by the way, what's up with that junkyard down the road? Oh my God, that pink house? Yeah. Like there's a notable pink house on Oakdale. There was actually a relatively large police incident there a few years ago. Everybody knows it, right? Then take some notes as you approach the home. I always park, if it's a long driveway, I will park. I will never block the driveway. I will never block garages. I try not to park in people's garage or driveways if I can, unless it's a long driveway. I never know when, maybe a spouse who doesn't necessarily want to interview me suddenly is blocked out of the driveway or her spot or his spot, and I did it, right? They're just going to walk in with an attitude, right? With a bias. Ring the doorbell, see if it works. And then again, I start taking off my shoes. I do the same thing every single time. I take off my shoes. I do it kind of slowly because they're always slip off. And they're like, John, just keep your shoes on. Well, if they're not wearing shoes, I'm not wearing shoes. If they're wearing shoes, then I'll wear shoes. But I always still check. I look just to make sure I didn't step on anything, that would stain their carpeting. Nothing worse than unintentionally killing yourself in their minds. Then we're going to ask some questions, right? We're going to do a tour. Then we're going to sit down. But let me go back to this real quick. I asked for permission and take notes. This is what I say. I do it the same way every single time. Guys, thank you so much for the invitation today. Thank you, by the way, for doing your homework assignment. I appreciate that. I saw that you had completed it. We'll go over it later. But here's what I'd like to do today. If it's okay with you, I'd like to have you give me a tour of your home. I apologize in advance. I take a lot of notes and ask questions. And then I pause. The reason why I pause is I'm looking at both of them. I want to see their reactions when I say that. The reason why I want to see their reactions to that is because if I start seeing them kind of smirking and smiling, I know that more than likely there was somebody in that home before me and they flew through it. I have taken away so many listings from other agents because the feedback that I hear was, that guy, we interviewed a couple people before you, John. I just want to tell you this. They were both out within 20 minutes. They gave us a price. They said, let me know when you're ready. They left no materials. Or if it was like Shore West, they have a bound book, and it's nice, but it's not personalized. And so out they went and they lost the listing to me. Why? Because I showed them that I care. How did I show my care? That I was prepared and that I listen. I ask the right questions. When they answer, I listen and I take notes and I take what they're saying seriously. People like you, as long as they know that you care about them, right? It's really very simple. All right, back to my sheet. So now we take the tour, we sit down. Now we got to start having some conversations, right? Who else have you interviewed or plan to interview? Oh, by the way, at the end of the tour, I always ask them, I just say, hey guys, do you have like 15, 20 minutes where we could just sit and talk? And I could show you what I've found so far. Well, of course they're going to say yes, right? But I always ask. If you are new to real estate, like John, you would talk about your team. Our team this, my team lead this, our firm this, the Heroes program, the Certified Pre-Owned Home program. I mean, all those things are great things. You have to be the one to talk about it, though. Okay, but it's not braggadocious moments either. You don't want to be arrogant about it. You just want to, hey, guess what? Yeah, blah, blah, okay, whatever, right? This is where you got to ask the right questions. Who else have you interviewed or planned to interview? Now you're the first. Am I going to be the last? I'll let you know. I love people's, candor. And then we go through that sheet. I noticed that you guys, entered this information. I noticed that, and ma'am, I didn't get a chance to ask you, what do you think of the top 3 selling points of your home are? And then I look at the husband, I'm like, let's just get hers. And then, that he laughs, and then we do the same thing. What are the 3 things a buyer might not like? What about price? Have you guys had a chance to think about price? I always get that information from them, right? Then we can go into the comps. Then we can go into all those other things. The only comps that I print, and I go back to MLS here, and I don't know why it's not working, but the only comps that I print are the ones that, maybe like 20 to 25 quick comparables. Like if there isn't a lot of sales in a certain area, um, I think what's messing me up here is my solds. So let me try something different. So I'm getting way too many listings in here. Let me try this one more time. I'm going to do it a different way because I've learned how to navigate MLS a little better. Okay, so maybe what I do, I'll just take, let's say 0.75. I create the radius. Now I'm looking at results. So one sale or one active listing. Now let me do this. Let me go back. I'm going to do the last year and I'm going to switch it to sold, active, and delayed. Now those results are going to change. So now I got 46. Okay. Now remember, I'm doing this before I even get there. So list price, I'm just going to maybe do a minimum of probably even 275, 501, sold 275, 501, minimum of 3 bedrooms, 1 2 car garage. I don't think we'll get much difference here. So yeah, we lost 33. So that's a pretty good start. So I click on those and then all I do is I just print the list. So I click them all, I hit selected, and then I just print the list. I'm not going to do anything really complicated here. All I want is the list. I don't want the detail. I'll do the map, but I don't need anything else other than that. And it's just going to give me a list. I mean, this is all it is. And then I highlight like anything that might be pending or under contract. In this case, obviously not a lot of activity in this area, but the comps are pretty good. And that's all I leave them. I give them the NAR. I might give them the Zillow. I definitely give them the profile. I don't give them the net sheet. So with the profile on this particular property, it takes a second or two to generate. It's a full report. Now, I may not print that and give them to it initially. It depends. I might also just email it to them when I'm done. It depends on how confident I am with my price. So if I hit the view, it'll show me what this profile report looks like. Okay. And it's nice. I mean, and it also, what's cool about this too is that it pulls comps in from recent sales that maybe were not part of MLS. So as you're doing comps, I go back to this and I just make sure that um, I've got what I need. Again, this is not pulling from MLS. It's pulling from public records. So the cool part about this report is that it's pulling things that I may have not known about. So then we talk about Remax a little bit. We talk about our marketing. Um, if you have a pledge, that's the time to go over that with them. And then here's your tools. And then we get to the listing point on the checklist. So I'm going to kind of stop here. Remember, this is kind of getting you towards the active part. So now I want to transition a little bit to how we talk about price. If somebody says to me, we just think that price is low, I go into inquisitive mode. Shocking. I go into inquisitive mode, and that is walk me through what you're thinking. Kind of like when I was in law enforcement, I would tell people, or I'd ask people, and it would confuse them sometimes. I'd say, hey, do me a favor. Just start at the beginning and tell me everything you know. And then I would take notes and I would listen to certain things. And then I knew I'd come back, clarify some things, whatever it was. And in the same way, when I'm talking to them, I'm just going to go sell me on that idea. And I always, depending, because there are some things you can also say during this. This is not an adversarial process. We're a team. And when they are relying on me and they won't participate in my pricing conversation, then I have to go about it differently. If they come out and say, John, look, if we could get 425,000, we'd be tickled pink. It's okay. On the surface, that seems a little high. I have to be able to justify the price. Otherwise, we're not going to get showings. If we don't get showings, we're not going to get an accepted offer. When we get an accepted offer, we have to continue to justify it to an appraiser because 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a loan, on your buyer side, and it has to appraise. Well, what do you mean it has to appraise? It has to appraise for 100% of the purchase price. So in other words, even though they're putting 25% down and their loan is only 300 on a 400 and some whatever, I don't know, I don't want to do math. 400,000 purchase price, $300,000 loan, it still is still appraised for 400. They're like, well, that's ridiculous. I'm like, yep, it is. But that's the way it is. Um, so there's things that we have to figure out. So when we dial into the price, pricing is about justification. I want you to remember that. Pricing is about justification. I control marketing, not the market. Compensation. They want to lead with compensation. I don't want them to be able to get the opportunity to talk about compensation before I bring it up. I want to set the anchor. I want to be able to say, this is where we're going to anchor the boat right now. And when I'm ready and I'm to that point and they've been listening to me, we've been engaging, we've got a price in mind, then I want to talk about compensation. I will bring it up. The next thing I'd like to talk about is compensation. I charge X, whatever your X is. Now you have to be prepared to really address what everybody kind of still thinks is 6%, right? That's kind of the benchmark. If they don't understand it, they don't know, they haven't sold a home in a while, you can say, well, you guys sold your home 7 years ago, right? Roughly. And they go, yep. When you sold your home, do you remember giving away a co-broke commission? Yeah, I mean, I think so. Well, more than likely, it was probably 2.4%. So on the list side, we do 3.6%. We actually just do 3.5. Now, remember, this is where I gave you those compensation plan and laminated things. Okay. I gave you those in your library. I gave you those plans so that you could very easily go back and just give them a laminated, it's essentially a spreadsheet, right? So depending on how you want to do this, you can rely on that sheet solely. If you're newer, I would rely on that sheet all the time. If you're experienced and you know you can get more, and by the way, there is nothing wrong with making lots of money. You just have to be able to provide value. Like I remember we had an agent one time who he didn't I think he sold maybe one or two homes a year. And then all of a sudden, one day, he gets 8% on the listing side. Like, what the? First of all, where in the hell did that come from? Second of all, congrats. But that's a little high. How do you justify that? What happened? Well, he wanted to, that was with a 2.4%, thing. So essentially the agency was getting 5.6%. Now, as much as I like that, that's a little extreme because what I don't want on the broker side of things, the owner side of things, is for somebody to feel like they got ripped off. Because at some point, sitting around a campfire, you could talk about selling the homes. And if the compensation comes up, holy crap, right? That's all we're going to hear. Oh my God, you paid what? You got ripped off. What's that company? There's a fine line. But the bottom line is if you're new, use that sheet. It's either got 3.5, or 4% on the list side, or it's got 2.5, 3, and 3.5. And then you get to decide what you want to do. Okay. So I think it's really great. It's why I put it together. It's something I would highly recommend you use. Either way, though, you have to be prepared for objections. And objections are, well, I know so and so will do it for less. And the answer would be, that's great. Well, now you know what so and so is worth. And you let that sink in and pause for a little bit. Now, they may not even understand what that means yet. And you may say, guys, if you want me to make you the most amount of money, every dollar that I make, you make 96 cents. If I get you $10,000 above what we think we can get, I'm gonna, I don't get all of that, right? You get 96% of that. And I'm happy to do it. That's my job. But you want somebody that's going to work hard for you. You want somebody that's going to negotiate like I'm able to do. That agent just, what are they going to do with your money? Obviously, they didn't negotiate their own compensation, their own pockets, right? So you have to be able to word that, and that takes a lot of time and practice. You have to be able to, kind of understand when to bring that up, how to set that anchor. There's a really great video by Travis Robertson. It's about 4.5 minutes. It's called I think it's negotiating your compensation. It's on YouTube. I don't think he coaches a lot from what I've heard over the years, but I love that video. It's a great video, and that's where the setting the anchor kind of came from. So take a look at that. The other thing is you got to look at timeline. And right after we get past compensation, I just had this the other like a week and a half ago. They're like, well, we know that we can list this for less. And I said, yeah, I understand that, but you're not going to get me. I'm in the top half percent in real estate sales in the nation. And people are like, oh wow, yeah, oh geez, yeah, I've sold this many. And I don't like to brag about it, but that's a massive amount of experience. And I'm really known for my negotiating. You got to promote yourself, right? You are in competition with other people. And you never, ever, 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 ever want to badmouth anybody else. You know, badmouth another company, badmouth another agent. The only thing that I've said, and I've had some really interesting scenarios, including an agent that used to work with us. Um, Her and her husband, she wasn't licensed. They tried to rip us off. He was eventually charged with a felony, should have done jail time, lost his uh, lost his ability to practice law as an attorney in Wisconsin, and it actually they got divorced on paper. They still live together. They're still together, but they did that to avoid. It's just I don't want to go into any more of it. They're just not great people. And all I said when that name came up one time is I said you might want to investigate that a little bit further. And so what do you mean? I said I don't want to get into it, but I was in law enforcement, right? Whether you use me or you use them, I wished you the best, but you may want to investigate that one a little bit further. I mean, she married a felon, right? And then, anyway, whatever. So, next step is timeline. And when I sit down with people, I say, okay, let's talk about timeline. What's your ideal listing date? On the form already that they filled out, that's number one. You can refer back to that. And by the way, I never bring, that stuff. I just access everything in my computer. Got to make sure your computer is charged. I use the hotspot on my phone. I never ask them to connect to their internet unless I absolutely have to. Why? Because it's personal, right? You never know what people think. Maybe they're hacked once, and now I've got their information. I'm not doing that. But now I start going through timeline. Okay, so let's talk about what marketing looks like. When do you guys think you're going to be ready for photos? Well, I think we got probably a good solid weekend ahead of us. All right, so, and then I go right, and I'm just going to show you what I do. Let me just share my screen again. I use ShutterZone. And so with ShutterZone Media, I just like their process. I have negotiated some really good deals with them. So we get discounted pricing, and it is definitely discounted pricing. So what I'll do is I will log in just so that I know I'm getting the pricing right off the bat. I go to order a photo shoot. Now I'll just use a listing that I just went live with today because you can't, you got to get past this screen here. So I go to River Park Circle. I'll just say west. It doesn't really matter. It's not west. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 0.2, whatever. Um, and then why is it not popping up? Let's do east. Okay, there we go. So residential, I want to do usually package two, which is listing photos and 3D walkthrough. I don't really add on much of anything except down at the bottom. Um, the marketing enhancement kit, that's the best part of it, in my opinion. I'm just going to hit any available. Now, notice here that they do include a travel fee for some of these people. So, usually I start with the ones that I don't have to do anything with. So let's say I'm going to do, 3 p.m. next week on the 14th. I enter the questions and away we go. And I just book it right there. I'll book it right there while I'm talking to them. And then we back off, then we kind of go from there. All right. So if April 14th, which is a Tuesday, if you're ready for photos, that means I'll get them by Wednesday and I can get you into delayed. Or best case scenario, you have your photos, let's say on a Friday or a Thursday, Friday, then you go into delayed until next Thursday, right? Where you have some time to promote the listing, get it ready, get your stuff out there. By the way, I always have additional lock boxes available, or if I know that I need them, I grab them from Monica, and that way I'm not coming back to put a key in there. I'm ready to go. I don't need to make 7 trips to the house. One or two is fine. So, anyway, so I'm ready to go with that. I got the timeline. We go into delayed, and my ideal timeline is I want to be in delayed from anywhere from 5 to 10 days. Build up that hype. Let me put it out on social media. The coolest part about Shutter Zone on the back end. Am I still sharing my screen here? Go back to sharing it. The back end of Shutter Zone to me is the best. Let me just get back to I think this is it. Like on the back end of this site, let's just see. Marketing? No, that's not it. Give me 1 second to figure it out. I'll go to edit property. I can see how many all-time views there are. Like this one here, um, I could not, I didn't have time to promote it on some of the social media sites. I just got a little bit in there. My record is 12,000 on one listing. It was actually in my subdivision. You can add an email subscription here where your people, and I usually do it on a Monday, will get a summary of all the traffic. Okay. Now I'm going to preview this, even though this is kind of into our next segment. But when you have a listing, I'll just go to my listings. Sorry. I'm going to go to change in my listings. So this is the one that just went live today. I can go down to the bottom. Nope, sorry. I go to activity up on the top and I can have this report go to people on a regular basis, right? You have to add them as contacts if they're not already in MLS. But later today, I've got to do that in Shutter Zone, and I also have to do it in MLS. I want these people to be getting something from me, right? The timeline, back to the timeline though, I just back it off, right? So if I'm live on a Thursday at 12:01, it comes out of delayed. I want to have an open house with my team from 3 to 5 in the afternoon, 4 to 6, whatever. I let them choose. Those are becoming pretty popular. Um, then I'm going to go to another open house on the weekend. Open houses sell homes maybe 2 to 3% of the time, but buyers don't know that. Right? Buyers go, oh my God, they've got 2 open houses. They're serious about selling this thing. So you can see we already went live today, and this is how many people have seen it. Right? That's just an MLS. I haven't even got it out to social media yet. But I want them to have that information. I want them to be hearing something, receiving something from me. Make use of that technology. Um, and then I do something. I always have a marketing narrative. This is what I'm going to be posting on social media. You have to make sure you're in compliance. It could be coming soon or it could be new listing. The description, and then this is the page. It's going to take them right to this page. Okay. They can click on the other things here, or it'll just start to scroll. So it'll scroll through the photos. This is one of the advantages that I really like about Shutter Zone. And again, on the 3D tour, all they have to do is go in as users and it'll just kind of zoom them in to start. Starts right at the front door. They just walk through, right? You guys have seen this. This is why it's really important, though, that they can look up and down. So you got to make sure that even down, you don't have shoes, and you're like, well, that's not going to be visible. Yeah, everything is visible. Um, So I've got that available to me. And then as we start to get into the behind the scenes stuff, I also have the seller listing instructions. Now, these are available in the agent resources seller folder. I've got everything in there for you guys. And it's all you have to do is just customize it, fill in your dates. This goes to the sellers either at the beginning of delayed or when we go live. And I just changed the address. Most of this just is the same, but I do have to put in the ad or the dates, right? These are important, the key dates, and then also here's the link. If you want, you could also, make that an actual link. Where is it? Where is it? Anyway, it doesn't matter. You put it as a link, they can click right on it. And then this is what we're asking. This is what we want. And then here's what happens. If I've got a co-lister, I'll put their name and phone number on there. If not, here's our information. And if you have complaints, call us. Call me. I mean, everybody should have this, in my opinion, in all of your listings or to your clients, or have something like it. The reason why I do it this way, you guys, is I template everything I possibly can to save myself time. There is absolutely no reason to be doing things over and over. In fact, if you do a task more than once, it should be templated. So that's a big deal. And then I also have these agent instructions that go into MLS. So, as part of the listing, I've got this is what we want. And I'll show you how this worked out really well. So if I go back into MLS just for a second, I'm going to go to my listings. I got this one under contract. We had 14 offers. When you go to documents, you're going to see I've got the delayed form, which is not a public form, listing contract, not a public form. The lead-based paint, seller condition, the property info sheet, that's when you're ready to list. You send that to them as part of your listing packet. They fill it out, and then the agent's instruction sheet. And in this case, I put, hey, post occupancy is a really big deal. I put it in red. And here's our system. Every single offer we got was closing on or before May 15th. Occupancy was given through as long as June 15th in some cases. And the sad part is that I could only accept one offer, right? You always wish you had about 10 of these homes because that'd be really nice, especially for making money. Um, but that's what I do. I mean, that's every single listing. The other thing you want to make sure that you do is very early on run a search and hold through Alltech. You just email them and say, hey, can you run a search and hold at 1248 River Park Circle East? And that is part of the listing process. That's part of the process that Monica will also do. We do it for every listing. And the reason why we do it for every listing is we want to make sure early on, even at the CMA stats or statutes, no, at the CMA point, I guess, that that we can find out if there's anything going on that we need to do about. The last thing you want is to get surprises thrown at you a week and a half before closing when the title report is done. Like, something came up, and we see it happen where they'll have a lien against the property. I mean, I've seen paternity liens. I've seen tax liens. I've seen, like, oh, hey, you have a HELOC on here. You didn't tell us about that. But we closed that like 4 years ago. Why is that still on there? Those conversations are best had at before listing, if you can. So I'll go back to this, to the listing checklist. That's where we're going to pick off in number two, session number two on this. I want to make sure I have a little bit of time here to answer any questions you guys might have, though. I know there's only a couple of you present, but Johnny, Brad, anybody? You don't have to. I know Greg's note-taking otter is not going to ask any questions. So the question is, and it's common, is what do you do to combat some of the questions or objections is what we call them when it comes to compensation. So compensation is obviously a big deal, right? It's a big deal for us, it's a big deal for the firm, it's a big deal for them. Everybody wants to win. Now I can appreciate the fact like when you're dealing with Shore West, who's been around a really long time with lots of agents, their compensation structure is very, very, very cut and dry. 3.6%, 495. Only the really top producing agents can vary that. That's it. Take it or leave it. That's one of the reasons why agents have left Shore West is because they don't have the flexibility to make a little bit less. Think about that for a minute. I want to make less. But if you lose listings because of compensation, I think there's two things going on. Number one, you don't completely understand your value. Your value proposition is everything. I am worth this because this, and this, right? That's why I put together those compensation sheets. And if you don't have one, just ask Monica. We've got laminated ones for you. I put together one that's a little more aggressive and one that's a little more reasonable. You are worth a lot more than you guys think, right? You got a great brand behind you. It's not perfect. Um, you got an office with a couple, programs with the certified pre-owned home program. And that is almost a guarantee of making more money. You've got the Heroes program, which will give people discounts. But again, you're not going to give people discounts on both. In other words, if you have a hero, let's say he's in the military, they're selling a home, they're buying another home, they're not getting both sides of it. I mean, figure out which one you want to do and give it to them. I don't care. But you have a lot of value in those programs. And that's one of the reasons why I created and copyrighted them, is so that we would have exclusive use to those and we could, basically run with it. I think if and maybe I'll make this statement because this always holds true. Absent value, price prevails. So if you haven't expressed and really sold them on your value, you're not going to get your top price. It's just impossible because you can't have it both ways. They want to feel, like I'll tell people, like I start at 3.5. I think I can save you some money rather than a 2.4. Co-broke commission and compensation offer to others. I think I can get two. If we have competition, I'll get two for sure. But again, they if you're just focusing on numbers, I think you're missing the most important part, and that's value. Some don't, and you're not going to be able to win those people. And that's why sometimes you've got to acquiesce a little bit, give in, but you've got to make the attempt to negotiate. If you're bending over backwards, you're not a good negotiator. If they're giving in, they're not a good negotiator. A lot of times I'll start depending on what it is. Like if it's a hero, I just start at 3. So I normally charge 3.5. I've already done the math in my head. You might go like 2.85 or something, whatever you do. Whatever you do, though, make sure if you quote them something that you honor it and that you also write it down, because I tend to forget. If I got a hero in front of me and somebody that I know, like a chief of police, over the years, I've discounted theirs a little bit more. Why? Because when I come to them with a flyer, I have a decent shot of it getting out there or getting on the bulletin board. I've trained a lot of these guys over the years, so they know me, but there's no perfect approach to it. I say you gotta anticipate. Watch that video from Travis Robertson. It's 4.5 minutes. It's an easy watch. Johnny, Brad, anything? So I appreciate you guys and those of you who are online participating. This is part 1. We'll have part 2, I think, next week. We're going to take it from the active listing forward on all the things you can do, all the things you should do, and then a little bit on negotiating offers, how to set your people up for success, and not only that, but make your life easier. That's important too. Like I made a fatal mistake this past weekend. I just did not have Easter blocked off in my calendar, and we were going live the week and a half before. We went into delayed or we came out of delayed on that Thursday. What is it? Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, whatever those days. I forgot. I should know this. I'm Catholic. Um, and then Easter. And I'm spending 4 hours on Easter Sunday, instead of with my family, I'm negotiating offers. And I just kept kicking myself thinking, you idiot. We did say that all offers were due on Sunday and we would negotiate it on Monday, but my Monday calendar was all messed up too. So, you've got to take all that stuff into account and make sure that you are, you're not don't set yourself up to screw up an entire weekend when you're going to be negotiating. Your life and your family time matters too. So those are the things that we'll kind of talk about in our next session as well. So thanks everybody, especially those who are going to watch this after the fact and online. Good luck. Let us know if you need help.